Thanks for joining us for Political Talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover Freedom 250, Crashing, We're Breaking Out, and Accountability Speak. We'll also have our segments International News and Economy. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soltner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff. We'll start with Freedom 250. Freedom 250 happened, and as you may know, there's American 250, which is the celebration of America's 250 years. And Trump decided to jump on this bandwagon and put something together called Freedom 250, which was actually for his birthday, which is, of course, in a different month than America's birthday, which is in July. But he says they're the same day, and to him, that may be true. However, the Freedom 250 moved forward, having a concert and a wrestling match in front of the White House. The concert didn't go so well. Most of the musicians, when they learned it wasn't America 250 that they were performing in, quit and canceled their performances. However, the wrestling went forward full steam ahead, and they even avoided the rain. There were rainstorms that were coming into the Washington, D.C. area on the same day as the matches, but it skirted around just south of the actual White House, so they avoided the rain, so good for them. And so anyone got anything on the concert or the wrestling?
The concert that never was? Yeah, pathetic. They tried to put together a concert, didn't even confirm any of the acts. Ready, shoot, aim. You're going to take your eye out, kid. This is ridiculous. And good for them. Good for the artists that bailed. Oh, my gosh. Good for the artists that bailed. What do we have? Millie and Vanilli. One of them's dead. The other one's not coming. Anyway, too many to list. Good for them, though. Good, and these are not big acts. They could probably use the money, assuming they got paid properly as agreed with, and that's not something you can assume with this bunch. But yeah, just taking the heat. There's a comedian named Nate Bargatze has been enjoying something, a bit of a moment, and he showed up at Freedom 250. Made sure to get lots of photos with all the Trumpers and Trumpettes and the maggots, and not going so well for him now. I'm seeing getting slagged on social media. He just had I don't know, he had something big come up, like a movie, or I think he hosted an award show. I hear he didn't do well. I hear the movie didn't do well, and so Hollywood will give you a couple of strikes, but I don't think it's more than 3, and he's had 2. Showing up at Freedom 250 might have been number 3. We'll see. Comedians try to I hate to say it, you got to pick a side in this country. You got to pick a side. The world demands, the country demands, the media demands. You can't just whistle through the graveyard and say, I don't talk about politics much, especially if you're going to show up at the president's birthday party. So, yeah, I love the entertainment absolute pratfall onto their butts. Helpless, hopeless. They are as good at entertainment. War, which do it again. I guess the UFC lost like $30 million. They asked him when he's going to do it again next. He says, I can't afford to do this again. Cost $60 million to put on. He made $30 million doing it. Yeah, even Donald Trump can read that math.
Wait. You're saying that something that Donald Trump was involved with financially
didn't do well. I know. Didn't pay off to anybody but anybody's benefit but Donald Trump. I know. It's crazy talk. And yet, I know. First time for anything, huh?
Huh. Shocking.
Oh, well, there's a sucker born every minute. Apparently, Dana White was the latest.
And good for him.
Good for him. I love that for him.
Yeah, I love that for him. And Hannah, anything on that?
Yeah, I was going to say it would be one thing if it was a lost leader that got you something, but I feel like it was all bad press. Rightly so. It's a stupid idea, and it shouldn't have been done. I do want to say one of the things that stood out to me was the Weather Channel tweeted about there being potential rain, and the administration's like rapid response wrote back to them, and they were like, "This is about like celebrating America. How dare you would say this? Whatever, whatever." And like, I don't know. The Weather Channel, they just report about the weather. Like, they don't have a political anything for the weather.
Old man yells at clouds.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the fact is,
Except
there
in this
was a
case, it was
storm.
old man's lackey.
But the bottom line was there was a storm. It did come in. It just happened to skirt around Anne Arundel and Prince George's, and it was just south of where Washington, D.C. is. So they were just being honest. All right, next failure. The next failure we have to discuss here is the failure to fix the algae blooms. If you recall here, you may have heard the reflecting pool was redone on the image of Donald Trump, and he wanted to drain it and repaint it and make it not a color that would reflect the Washington Monument, which is, kind of how it got its name, reflecting pool. And but he wanted to redo it like a swimming pool, make it a different color, and of course everybody rushed to, and he bragged about how the length of the reflection pool is longer than skyscraper buildings are tall. So it was a really major thing.
That's just science, Matt. You know it.
Exactly. And the reflecting pool is a little shallow, maybe in comparison to a building width, and but in height, he's absolutely right. It is a longer size than buildings are tall. So, congratulations, Mr. President. You passed this cognitive test too.
That's right.
But
if height were width, it would be taller than the tallest building. And
exactly.
if gumdrops were wishes, oh my God.
And so they did it, and they changed it all, and they filled it back up, and they got algae blooms. They didn't treat the water correctly, and there's starting to be algae blooms all over the bottom of it. So it doesn't really matter what color it is. You can't see it because it's getting covered up in algae. And the latest thing is, I think they're pouring in hydrogen
It's all
peroxide.
green. Green is the color.
It's all green. And they started pouring massive, emptying bottles of, or jugs of hydrochloric, so they're trying all sorts of hydrogen
peroxide. Gallon jugs by hand. It's taller than the
it's not
Empire
even
State
like
Building or something, Matt. You're doing it by hand? You got the world's best.
It's not even
people?
I don't even think it's some industrial whatever. I think they just went and got it at the store.
Yeah. I heard reports. It's like Walmart brand hydrogen peroxide. They didn't get a truck. They didn't get barrels. They didn't get do they have a pump? I worked at a swimming pool company for a while. I thought the go-to was chlorine. Maybe it's bad for the paint. I don't know. God bless. Don't risk the paint. The brand new don't chipped layer of that paint. It's paying off dividends already. You don't want to mess with that.
Tom, you wouldn't pour chlorine on a building, would you?
You're right, Matt. How stupid of me.
No matter how mossy if the building had COVID, you would.
Well, that's the bleach or the ivermectin. See, I'm not a scientist.
I also saw that Trump, I think, gave the refinishing or whatever to his pool guy. And I think that pool guy's person tweeted out, and they're like, just so you know, we did a good job. Please don't let this reflect poorly on us. And it's like, oh my God.
Heaven forbid. It's not reflecting jack shit except for a green hue. That's what it's reflecting.
There you go.
It's a reflecting pool, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Well, it reflects exactly what it now reflects.
It reflects the poor administration of this administration. This and Iran suffer from exactly the same problem. Somebody comes in, says they're going to fix it, says they're fixing it, completely wrecks it, makes it worse than they found it by leagues, by factors of 2 and 4 and 10, making it obviously worse. Everyone can see that it's worse. And then at some point they get tired from screwing it up. They get exhausted and they go, well, that's all the winning I can stand for one day.
But he spent a lot of money.
Yeah, and they tell you how lucky you are for that they that just got done destroying the entire project that they were supposed to be helping. And they'll tell you they did it better than anybody. I can't imagine having sex with these people. I can't. It's nobody wins. And
well,
it's the same thing though. From the reflecting pool to Iran, you take a problem, wasn't even a problem, and you just shatter it. You just.
We'll come back to Iran in a little bit. We do want to wrap up on this section, the Freedom 250, by mentioning that one of the Rasslers had a comment about Michelle Obama, an attack that's been made a number of times and is really ridiculous. And I don't want to mention the guy's name. I don't care about him, but a friend of Joe Rogan's, let's put it that way. And Rogan smirked and let it go and didn't correct it. And so, this is the caliber of people who were not only in attendance, but the people who were performing.
And Paramount ran it. They could have blocked that.
Yeah.
Had they wanted to. And Joe Rogan, he didn't flinch. He didn't stop smiling. He didn't say, gee whiz, man, we're on TV right now. Nothing. Not even self-deprecating, a little, Just let it fly, I guess. I mean, it's pretty gross.
Yeah. Something a little less gross, but something that we'll wrap up this section with.
Comparatively less gross.
Elephant, exactly, for a Republican. For an elephant was brought into a Republican convention and on its way out decided to release an opinion, release something, and wound up urinating all over the stage.
Trump paid extra for that.
Yeah, he always does.
Ask around. It's kind of his thing.
Anything else about the elephant before we move on?
I mean, kudos.
Kudos. Very good. So we will move on to our first segment of the evening, that being economy. And we're going to touch on two or three things here. One, of course, that Elon Musk has too much money, and that's been made clear. What do you think about the paper trail of Musk's wealth?
It proves there is no God and morality is an illusion.
Well, it certainly puts a dent in. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, it definitely proves that the economy is based on nothing. I was thinking about this the other day. I saw a news article that's like Musk is worth more than, General Motors and something else combined. And I just feel like this is on his launch of XAI and SpaceX. And I just feel like XAI is not even like in the top 1 or 2 AIs, right? It's not doing as well as OpenAI or whatever. And I feel like if it disappeared tomorrow and if SpaceX shuttered tomorrow, my life would be basically unchanged. And the amount of money he's making, people are saying, like whatever, he's like helping NASA. The amount of money he made is enough to fund NASA for the next 40 years. Like it's literally just not worth that much money. But the stock market is fake, so I guess it is worth that much money.
It's all right. It's all on paper. It's all value. It's all
number go up.
Subjective. Right. Could go up. Could go down in a day. Could lose it all. And
now,
in a crash.
I would love to find out what happens if Elon Musk just suddenly ceased to exist. That's fine with me. I think, as a minor quibble with your assertion, I think what's his Starlink satellites? I think those are doing big things for people. Like they used to be. I thought they used to be Ukraine's main method of communication, and then I saw headlines a year or two or three ago now, not recently, that Musk was messing with that. He was shutting that access off. I don't know what happened after that. Something must have.
Well, I remember he threatened to do it as part of a sort of backing Putin sort of thing, but I don't know. I don't know for a fact if he actually did.
Well, I was under the impression they were provided by U.S. military, but they were Starlink, so that gives two different entities a chance to pinch the kink the hose and stop that. So Ukraine seems to be doing fine with their drones, so they must be getting internet from somebody.
It's happening. And we'll move on to mention that the G7 is also underway. Speaking of the economy, one of the things I noted was that the leader of Canada, Mark Carney, said that no one country will lead in the future and coalitions are the thing. And no more, no less perhaps, than the coalition between Canada and Ireland. Ireland also happens to be taking over the chair of the G7, and Canada and Ireland are working towards a connection between Canada and the EU. So two big blocks trying to figure out how they can work together, and we'll see what sort of economic gains can be made through that. I would think that there'd be some. I think it'd be, if you can trade with the EU, it's probably a good idea. And I think if you can trade with Canada, it's a good idea. Now, I know that runs counter to current U.S. goals, but seems like it might be worth doing. And now they're finding each other, so we'll see what happens from that. But Carney does make an excellent point. It's going to be in the coalitions that you can make, and not just one country sort of making everything work. This is not the 1950s. This is the 2050s almost. So things have changed, and you're going to have to change with it, or you'll drop behind.
You know, we could have maintained a position of prominence years, decades into the future if somebody hadn't just again. Let me fix that. Smash, bang, sound of broken glass. Woman screams. All done. Fixed it. Did the same thing to our allies, our economy. Listen. I'm not comfortable with this country big dogging everybody at every turn. I think we've made some choices that weren't good, and shut down some really important things. But shutting ourselves out of alliances and coalitions, so that we're the one. It's not just going to be one country anymore. I know we were that country. Now we don't have that. Maybe it's better for the world, and that's good. I want the world to be safe, happy, and better than it was. But it's not good for this country. And, who knows what pieces are going to fall off, die off, or get bitten off, whether it's militarily or economically, culturally. We're going to lose one way or another. It's not good. Not good for the country.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, obviously there is something to be said for being like sort of like the world superpower. But it's not healthy, like it's not healthy. It's not sustainable, and there's all this like, fear about, oh, we're going to fall and then it's going to be China. And I know in the 90s, people were like, we're going to fall and it's going to be Japan and whatever. And I feel like there doesn't need to be the like next. I don't know if there's like any. There's countries that I think would be better or worse, but I don't like the idea of any one single country being the sole thing. It wasn't great when it was Britain before us or France before them or, Rome before them or whatever. I think that this idea of coalition is good. And I think that we'll get into this a little bit later with the Ukraine, but I feel like it then forces you to work. It's not, one person can't mess everything up. And I feel like there's a little bit of it dissuades you from, I don't want to go after a European country if there's a European coalition or whatever. And I think that these like sort of coalition building systems are better in the long run. And honestly, like if it ends up dinging America because we're not the chosen one anymore or whatever and have the world's currency, that's just something that the equality takes. It means to get equality for the people who are sort of not as well off means that the people at the top have to give some up. I can't complain about Musk having too much money and not also realize maybe we have too much money. It's not quite the same, but I feel like, yeah.
Oh, when you're done, please.
No, I just feel like if we can build, shared coalitions, responsibilities, alliances, whatever, I think that that's good as opposed to having a pyramid.
I'm with you. I don't like morally and sort of equality wise. I don't like that this country would lord it over other countries. I know it's better for our country. There is a universal truth. If there is a big dog on the block, it is better to be the big dog than to be subject to the big dog on the block. We are losing that big dog spot. And yeah, there's a certain moral sort of balance to it. France used to rule the waves. Then it was Britain. And then it's us. And then maybe after us, it's somebody else. And yeah, there's a sense that all, what goes up must come down, or if nothing else. But when those consequences come, part of being the big dog on the block means more money for the country. Well, I don't get most of that money. I get a tiny, tiny sliver of that money, but it could always be less, and they can always take it away from you. Also, that may come in the form of less safety, less security, more hassle when you go to the airport, because there's more threats than before, or maybe something happens to you or your loved one, or as a cost, as a factor of that security failing or being more vulnerable in one way or another. Maybe it's the next us being the next victim of the next Ebola or whatever bird flu or whatever frightening biological potential is out there. And if we eat it harder, all the harder for having lost some measure of preference overall, then it'll be harder to take. I'm with you that as we watched all our allies slip over the horizon in the first year of this Trump administration, I heard them talking on, at press conferences and saying, well, it's we used to be subject to the USA because of this and that, and here come all these tariffs. We're not going to work with them anymore. And they kind of let on diplomatically. They let on that it's better not to be under our thumb. They were looking forward to, forming different coalitions as they are and going around us because we were insufferable and impossible to work with. And there they go. But we're losing because of that. We can't influence those countries to do something that's better for us. So anyway, the consequences, I think, are different than in theory. They're going to be harder to take, but we'll see.
We'll see. And one other thing I'll point out before we leave this topic, which is Japan and the United Kingdom have now come to trade agreements that were not in place before, and certainly the UK needs it. The whole Brexit and economy debacle that has damaged that country for decades, they can certainly use some good news. So there's a little bit. We are moving on to our next issue, which is crashing. And the crashing, I've always said that with airplanes, there's a company that makes planes and it's called Boeing. And how much confidence can you have in a company named Boeing that makes airplanes? I don't know. But it is the reason the issue came up was there was a B-52 that crashed in California. And
Interestingly enough, a Boeing is not the sound it made when it crashed.
exactly, no recording shows that.
Totally off
And
brand.
right. And so, what have you heard? Anything you know about the B-52? We'll take a minute or two on that and then move on.
I mean, they're saying 8 people have died, uh, including military personnel, Boeing employees, and government civilians. I don't know that they've named any purported reason for it yet, so it's hard to really say.
That'll take months.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, unless it's something obvious, hit by a comet or something, for example. I don't know.
Right. But
Shot
I'd
out of
rather
the sky.
I'd rather there be an investigation and they have because that is something that is done very well. This is a tragic situation, and having professionals do the job professionally to look into it and figure out what exactly did happen is important, and we can do that still.
Sure.
As much as the current administration might have tried to dismantle and underfund and remove funds from every department, including the FAA, it's there's a real function that is performed and that is important, and this is the sort of thing that we need to know. That this they need to figure out what happened
Of
in part.
course. I mean, that determines the entire context. Is it a tragic accident? Is it an attack? Is it something else entirely?
Yeah.
Speaking of,
it.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm lagging a little bit. There's been more crashes, it seems like, this year, and who knows if this is related to any of those crashes. But Matt, as you said, like sort of Boeing has been having more issues recently, and the FAA has been having issues not only since Trump, but also going all the way back to Reagan. And this is a pretty difficult task that requires you can't just become a FAA person. There's been a lack of them for a long time, and so obviously, again, we don't want to jump to conclusions. We'll see what the results say, but what they say, no matter what or not, this is a place in our world that we should be putting more energy and money into.
It is amazing though. These planes, you wouldn't think anything can happen to anybody at any time, but you wouldn't think these planes just go down. But I guess it's possible.
Well, and we should mention also that there was another incident involving planes over in Missouri, where 12 people are now dead after a skydiving plane crashed. And I guess it's 11 skydivers and the pilot. And the plane was identified as Pacific Aerospace P750, and that crashed on last Sunday, just after takeoff. And so the sort of figuring out what happened and why is very important. I agree with Hannah on that. This is the sort of stuff that you can't just just ignoring is not is a problem, and you got to actually respond, and you got to have competent people to do the job well, because this does result in people's lives. So it is important, and the deadliest crash in the airport's roughly 50-year history is something that hopefully will be taken seriously. Going on to the next crashing issue, which is a different kind of crashing. Mitch McConnell is in hospital. They have not said exactly, the details are not being released, but they say he is getting the care that he needs. So something is wrong, or something else is wrong with Mitch McConnell. And we'll also mention the SCOTUS saying that Alabama can't use nitrogen in their executions. And there was some talk earlier about will they go to the Running Man model? What are they going to do? They got to figure something else to execute people. What is it they can do? So we'll open those two topics up for a little bit here. Anything on Mitch McConnell? Anything on SCOTUS?
I will say they could just not execute people. We could just stop doing it. That's a possibility.
I agree with that. I can be pretty bloodthirsty, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who do the most heinous things, because we do. People are pretty capable of pretty heinous things. So it's not really with sympathy for them, but the thing that that's irreducible to me is that people aren't good at governing and watching over other people. We're just not good at it. Somebody has to do it, and we're all we've got. But we make mistakes all the time. We're jealous, we're petty, we're greedy, we're angry, we're stupid. Sometimes it's part of the human condition. And unfortunately, as lofty as the goals and the highest of high offices are, that stuff creeps in there just like anything else, just like rust. You're not immune. It's a thing. And I guess, long story short, too late, the state will eventually kill innocent people. They'll eventually kill innocent people, and they'll also botch that, because that's how it goes. I don't know why. Some of these things, I've worked at places that run like clockwork, and they do amazing things the right way all the time. And yet, when some of these things are as simple as inject this, do that. Frightening stories and stories come out of these places. People aren't good at it. We're just not good at it. And so we should build a system that errs on the side of compassion, errs on the side of caution, errs on the side of, hey, maybe we're doing this wrong even now, because we've always done it wrong. There's never been a time when we didn't make mistakes. We are human. And so I think that maybe the state shouldn't kill people, because eventually, even if you get it right 99 times out of 100, that other 1% matters, especially if that's you, if you're the one. So, but we're also barbaric and warlike and, like I said, angry and vengeful. So we'll always have that. We're human.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, even with perfect things, with unpredictable government, they could make anything they want punishable by death. They could just be like, hey, protesting is now treason. That's punishable by death or something. So, don't think that because you're a law-abiding super citizen that you're not going to get on the wrong side of this stuff.
Pretty and good.
That said, if McConnell dies in the hospital, I will have been sadder about other things in the past.
Fair point.
Oh, McConnell. There's something in there. I haven't developed that, but I will be glad to see the back of McConnell. He has had a chance to serve this country 68 ways from Sunday and has botched it. When the chips were down and it counted, he shrank and failed this country. And in a way that countless millions of people, not to overstate it at all, millions of people will be the worse off for it because of Mitch McConnell and his actions and inactions. And he has demonstrated live and on television that he doesn't care. He doesn't mind. It doesn't bother him. His conscience is not an issue. So whatever slows him down a tick is fine with me.
Speaking of illnesses and things that are happening out there, there has been an Ebola outbreak happening in East and Central Africa. The hantavirus is still out there. And with the cases of measles that have been coming up in Utah, the United States, may be losing its status as having had measles eliminated. So let's talk about we're talking about illness. Let's keep it up. What else you got on illness? Ebola, adenovirus, measles. What do you think?
Well, I can say from my perspective, I see less and less of these in the media. I keep seeing them sort of flourish, bloom like a fungal infection, and then gone. Also like a
Like an
and so
algae.
I haven't heard that much about it lately. I don't know. One minute we're supposed to fear for our lives, the next minute there's not much to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, it's always a little bit of a catch-22 in these things, and that we don't seem to have like a, you know, not to put words in Tom's mouth, but I feel like he was saying sort of things like this. Things either seem to be like red alert, or like not a problem. And so like, it's interesting, with this like measles thing, there's been outbreaks happening in Utah for like a year now, which feels like a pretty big red alert, especially for something that is unnecessary. And it's really only being like held at bay because the US fortunately is like a large place. And so like I guess a lot of people from Utah aren't getting into, places with they're either not coming into places with low enough vaccination rates that they're causing mass infections there, or they're coming to places that, have pretty decent vaccination rates. And so when things are breaking out, they're not really going everywhere. But it's still an issue. And then as far as Ebola goes, the outbreak is it's almost certainly getting worse, partially because of the funding that, Musk and all of them cut with Doge. And I just feel like even if it's not here, I remember the last outbreak that reached America was in like 2016 or 2014. I remember when it was. And I remember at the time thinking that we had kind of overreacted. But I do think the best way to avoid overreactions is to monitor and stop things as early as possible. So, we should watch them in Africa as it's happening here.
I would like to point out, well said, Hannah. I got no bones to pick with that at all, of course. But I would like to point out that roughly 6.5 years ago, we had an outbreak in this country after we fired all the foreign outbreak people to watch for these things, monitor and warn us, and maybe some of this stuff, they can stuff it right where it starts before it gets anywhere. We fired all those people, and we got along for a little while. No problem. We didn't have any COVIDs until 2020, the end of somebody's term. But we had it, and here we are, term number 2. And what is the first thing they did? The first 6 months, they tore everything down. They got Doge, whatever that is or was, and still is and shall be again, whatever that was. They just started ripping insulation out of walls. As far as that goes, it's a terrible metaphor. They just started stripping copper. Maybe that's better. They just started destroying things. That's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly what we did before that thing happened, when so many Americans started dying that you couldn't get into the hospital to get seen because they were overrun with people with a dry, hacking cough and comorbidities that sent them straight into the cold ground. As a matter of fact, we were stacking bodies like cordwood. I keep having to say this. We seem to have forgotten. It only takes 6.5 years to forget such a monumental event where they're stacking grandmas in trucks, in bags, because we couldn't. The infrastructure was overrun with dead people. And we're doing, I guess, we're following the same footsteps. This is nuts. It's Idiocracy Part 2, the sequel. And the sequels are always worse than the original. But we're just sleepwalking right into it. And also war. I'm going to stop now because I can't think of a way to end this diplomatically.
and neither can they. So there you go, justice. Okay, we are going to move on. We are going to move on to our next segment. This one is the second segment for the night is international news and some things that are happening around the globe that we thought we'd mention. And we're going to actually start off with the United Kingdom. We talked a little earlier about what their situation is. We thought we'd bring it up and have a little more time to talk about it. For starters, there's the Prime Minister, Starmer, Keir Starmer, and what's happened with him. When he came in, it was after 14 years of conservative rule that had dismantled the country's economy, that because the parliamentary system was able to change its leadership in order to attempt to extend its majority hold on the government. And so they went through a handful of leaders who the people never actually voted on, just the Tory party. And they put in all sorts of people to try different things, one of whom an arch right wing, alt right, whatever, extreme right that you want to call it, Liz Truss, who brought in all sorts of the right way of the extreme right wing's economic policies, and that's what dismantled the country economically. But Starmer came in and said, "Look, this is with the election that mostly seemed to be responding to wanting to get rid of the conservatives. They wound up electing Labour and Keir Starmer." Um, he came in with a promise of, "I don't want to do flashy things. I don't want to talk about other stuff. I want to be a competent leader. I want to worry about being effective and competent and sticking to the issues and just doing that." And a number of decisions that he had brought up actually backfired. He did things like there was a winter fuel allowance for the elderly that was supposed to take place. And instead of sort of a more labor approach of, yes, we're going to help the elderly, he said, well, we got to do a little more right leaning thing and we got to cut back on those payments to be economically stout. And that kind of thing has backfired on him very seriously. There's in the most recent election, which was local seats, councils are what they're called. The Labour Party lost 1,600 council seats, and the up and coming extreme right wing Reform Party wound up gaining 1,400. So that kind of gives you an idea of what people are thinking about, and people are showing that they're unhappy with the leadership they have currently. He hasn't followed through on those promises of being efficient and being effective, and it's going to continue to hurt the UK. What do you guys think of Starmer and Truss and Brexit and the economy of the UK?
I'm not the sharpest student on that, but I do feel like Britain was a fool to separate from the Union. It seemed like it was doing them more good than harm. And from the media I saw around the election, the arguments being made were disingenuous to me. They looked like they were right-wing scare tactics, just like you see here. Except it wasn't the Mexicans that were coming and taking all the jobs and I don't know, eating the culture, whatever they were saying. But eating the dogs and the cats. But it seemed like it was built on jingoism and phony go it alone, just like Americans fall for the cowboy narrative when it's more like apes together strong. There's strength in numbers, coalitions, diversity. Anyway, so I was against it, but I don't know that much about it. I do, in that spirit, I do hope they find their way back to joining the European Union because the U.S. isn't always going to be your friend. As we've shown in the past, and we're definitely showing now, they can't always count on us to be the big stick sometimes. And Putin is a lot closer to them than he is to us. We are not even in the way, even if we wanted to be, and so they should look out for themselves and form coalitions of strength where they can find it. And right now is a good time and place to be strong against Putin and help Ukraine to boot. So it makes more sense to be together than not.
Anna?
I feel like this episode is becoming a very pro EU episode, ironically. But no, I mean, I agree. I think that sort of my statements, as stated above, like I think that working together is better than not. I think that this is why we have things like the EU and the UN and all these other sort of organizations around the world that do things like that. And so I think that it was foolish to leave. I think that it's also probably pretty interesting. I wonder if people in Britain would be on the side of places like Ukraine joining the EU, even though they so actively left it. As for Starmer himself, he seems like he's been sort of a spineless, hasn't really done anything, he's just sort of capitulated. It's sort of akin to things that are happening here, and not to sort of American centralize it, but if he's not going to the Labor Party is the center left party, and if he's not going to do anything, or if he's going to sort of pander to people who are sort of more on the conservative side, then obviously there's a saying I've heard that conservatives will always do that better than you will. So, anytime that the left panders, people are just going to be like, oh, well, why would I go to you for these panders when clearly you agree with the other side and they're doing it better? And so that really only leaves space for the right, the far right, and the far left. And it does seem like that's the way the votes are going. There are a lot of them are going to Reform or Greens or this new party.
Yeah, that is true. In those council elections, the big shock was that the Reform Party and the Green Party made gains, in Reform's case, big gains, and the traditional parties, Labour and Tory Party, both took big hits. And that's the thing as well. Tory Party is completely is falling apart, and it seems to be all those people that Reform used to say are the horrible Tories who are so horrible and should never be followed or trusted are now Reform Party members. And all of a sudden they do trust them and they do want to listen to their right wing propaganda and the right wing economics. And so we'll see how that plays out. Suella Braverman and uh, uh, Generic, the other guy who was attempting to be party leader time after time but failed. Both of them have wound up front and center on Reform's new party list. So we'll see. We'll see what the Brits will take. I mean, they did take Brexit, and they did take, the all of the. They've taken all the things the Tories gave them for 14 years. So will they look forward to changing things, or will they just wind up going back to the same old thing? Stiff upper lip and keep calm and carry on and all that nonsense. And we'll see if they actually are willing to accept change that will help them. Uh, you know, if they wind up with Nigel Farage as their leader, the last thing they can do is criticize Trump for all the nonsense that he brings, because it's going to be the same thing for you. We'll see what actually happens. They've got a few more years until an election has to happen. Unless, of course, Labor does the same things the Tories did, which is start having inter-party changes, inter-party elections to change the leader. And then what does that mean? Because that means that you're not giving the people the person they voted for, but they're giving them different leadership, and then that person might actually be effective. And then, you know, could Angela Rayner or Andy Burnham actually get a position and actually function, which would bring change to the top spot as well. we'll have to keep an eye on the UK and come back to that. But you did mention the EU and you did mention Ukraine, so it is worth pointing out that the EU did start the process of bringing in Ukraine and Moldova. Now it's just the beginning step, so it's going to take years, but they are doing. The EU is doing something and is building its coalitions. So maybe the UK can take a hint from that. Another issue we'll throw in real quick, um, actually, we'll get two more in, and one will be immigration because that's always a hot button issue that the right has been able to manipulate into putting armed armed units in U.S. cities over. But it's also affecting other countries, and in Ireland, Northern Ireland, which is still part of the UK, there was an incident where an immigrant stabbed a man in Belfast, and the reaction not peaceful. There were riots. The social media was used to dox immigrant families, so families that had nothing to do with the situation, but people are using social media to put out those people's family addresses, and people were following up on it, and they're going to their home and harassing them where they couldn't even be safe where they lived. So that's something that's happening in Northern Ireland right now. And then the same time, the sort of almost opposite of that, in Switzerland, they held a vote to put a cap on how many immigrants they would accept. And this was everybody sort of wanted to pay attention to see what would happen with that, because if they set a cap, that could set off a lot of other countries following that practice. And the vote came and went, and the Swiss actually stood up for the immigrants and said, "No, we're not interested in caps. We're interested in how we're gonna, what else can we do with the situation, as opposed to just doing something as perhaps, I don't know if the word barbaric would be appropriate, but perhaps retroactive as trying to set caps." Anything on immigration before we move on to the Iran war? The Iran war. We have an update on that. And part of it is that Belarus, the country that Russia worked together with in order to launch the attacks into the Ukraine, when the Ukraine war started that many years ago, however many years it is now, that their leader, Lukashenko, has apologized to President Zelensky. And he says he doesn't want to be drawn further into the war, although, of course, he helped launch it into Ukraine when the whole thing started. So the fact that he's saying this, the fact that he is apologizing, perhaps even sincerely, that it shows where we're heading with the Ukraine war. I think that he's trying to find a way to distance himself from Putin. He's trying to figure a way to bring to stabilize the situation a little bit. So that's very interesting that that's happening. Um, and so first, Belarus. Anything on Ukraine or Belarus?
Nope.
Iran. There's supposed to be an.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
no, I was gonna say that the it definitely seems that Lukashenko is trying to just like hedge his bets. He's like, hey, I can't handle anything from Ukraine, and also I can't alienate Russia. So everybody just be nice to me.
Yeah, trying to play hard into the middle. Well, he's done a lot for Russia, so we'll have to see if the Ukrainians are how they handle being, setting some sort of relation with Belarus, because that's perhaps that's making more of a friend than you know. Package deal. You get Belarus, you get Russia for half price. Maybe. I don't know. On to Iran. There's claims of a peace deal, which is not accurate at all. But there is a extension of a ceasefire, which might actually be observed. Now, there's part of it that most certainly won't be, which is that included in the deal that the U.S. made directly with Iran, it contains something saying that Israel will ease up on Hezbollah, which is the militant group that Iran funds to keep in Lebanon to stir up the pot. But the part of the agreement is that Israel will cease going into it will have a ceasefire with the southern part of Lebanon. However, nobody asked Israel and nobody included them in the deal. So they're looking at it, and their defense minister is saying, "We don't know anything about it. We're not going to follow it. So you can do whatever you want." So there is a ceasefire extension, and that's wonderful. And we'll see exactly how long it lasts. Trump did what he always does, which is he screwed his partner in the deal. Israel was the partner originally. And just like in Afghanistan, where Trump made a deal, invited the Taliban leadership to Camp David on July 4th to discuss it. Maybe you don't remember that. Maybe you don't remember how he cut and run on the Kurds. Maybe, and he cut and run on the Afghan government that the U.S. had set up. So he's got a habit of cut and run on his allies when
and
there's
leaving
something
someone holding the bag.
Exactly. Leave someone to hold the bag, and he feels he's made a deal. Therefore, it's okay to screw the person that you were working with along. Which I don't know. Maybe that's how real estate works or something. It's certainly not a tactic. I don't think that's good for international politics. But we get another example of it. We'll see how well it works out with Israel. And I'm sure that Israel will restrain itself in southern Lebanon because Trump said so.
They may have an opinion of their own.
Yeah. There's stay tuned, I think, is a fair way to put that in. But and also the nuclear issue was postponed for 60 days. So it's a peace deal, which is actually a ceasefire extension, which is actually nothing to do with nuclear issues, which originally was the purpose for going in. The justification early on was they're 2 weeks away from making a bomb, and we got to stop them. And that's a line that's been used a dozen times in 2 or 3 different administrations. But it's a good one. It works. I mean, the U.S. Population sucker is a sucker for it. So he used that one as well. Yeah. But here we are with the extension of the ceasefire, and nuclear issues will be put off for 60 days. Don't want to worry about that. Let's just get your signature on this little peace deal so I can go to the G7 and tout how much peace I've brought to the world. I'm sure that some other sports organization will give him another peace prize. What do you think?
Nothing to add from me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about a ceasefire because I don't like people dying, but it just feels like there's nothing. I don't know, unless there's some sort of like plan to do something. Then I don't know. I mean, like, isn't the whole part of this the nuke issue, which is now being postponed down the road? So are we just back to where we were, but less effectively? I don't know, but there seems to be less shooting is good, but there seems to be no plan here.
Yeah, but the shooting's not going to stop. And on top of it, we've lost money. And on top of it, we've handed the Straits of Hormuz to Iran, which was not controlling it before the war, but is now controlling it and will retain control because of the ceasefire agreement. And they're going to get a bunch of money given to them in, I don't know that they'll call it reparations, but the U.S. has agreed to give Iran an ungodly amount of money because why not, right? It's not his money. So he feels free to share it and get some out there. But the U.S. isn't getting any money, and the U.S. isn't getting any control in the area, and it's not achieving what it said was the goal, which was to stop the nuclear program. So the U.S. has failed. The U.S. has failed in everything, in every respect, to the Iran war, and now he gets to celebrate it as a great victory because of the extension of a ceasefire.
And you know what? Thank God. This could be so much worse. If it went on for another month, I'm led to believe the gas prices, you ain't seen nothing yet. And if he's done and he's not going to bomb any more schools, and he's not going to nuke anybody, and he's not going to keep just destroying hither and yon both economies of friend and enemy alike. And it's not even a deal. It's a memorandum of understanding that they don't even agree on. Like you said, with Israel and the money and all that stuff. It's a whisper of a shadow of a reflection in the mirror of a deal. Whatever, fine. Whatever gets them to stop shooting and let the oil go through so we can do our dirty, dirty business as usual and stop paying 10 times the cost of things that we're paying for. Fine. It could be worse. It's awful. We started a war over nothing. We just chose to start a war and then lose it. And then lose it in 2 months. And be flat on your ass, bleeding money, begging your victim to stop hurting you. It's pathetic. Thank God they're tying it off.
We'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
And I was going to say, the only thing we got out of it is assassinating a leader who's 86 years old and was probably not going to be around much longer. And if we do pay reparations, infusing them with money and some well-earned distrust of us.
And elevated on the national stage. They brought the mighty USA to its knees.
Right. Well, so did Vietnam and Iran and Afghanistan, Iraq, and
yeah,
North
it's
Korea.
Not up there with the highlights. No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got that good news out of the way. Let's check in on that in a month or so and see what's up with that. And we'll see that the shooting has stopped. Okay. Next, we have on to our next issue, Accountability Speaks. And to do so, I'm going to hand things over to Tom. Tom, what you got?
Well, I was talking this over with somebody I respect recently, and I was thinking to myself, I don't feel like the Democrats that I see on TV every week when I watch the Sunday shows, for example, I feel like they're not active enough. And I feel like the administration that's currently in power is making all signs they possibly can, for example, that they're going to mess with the next election. In addition to all the other crimes they're committing, the corruption, the graft, all these things, the election where we finally get back a few of the levers of this government, ostensibly, hopefully, we expect and hope. But they're already transmitting, they're already showing, they're displaying, they're telegraphing is what I'm trying to say, that they're going to mess with the election. They had Tulsi Gabbard, on site when they were fishing through some election ballots, taking things over, any number of bad acts. And so I'm thinking to myself, I wish Democrats were a little more loud and proud that, and warning people, brushing them back, telling them that if you're breaking the law, if you're fudging with this next election, we're going to get you. We're going to put you in prison. We're not. This is not going to turn out well for you. I feel like if you're in this administration right now, there's reason to be concerned that maybe this is the last tango, and you should just cut your losses and be happy with what you've got, or you can push it like this. This Reich is going to last 1,000 years, and you'll never have to pay anything back for anything, and not have to be held accountable. And I think there's a lot of people doing that math in their head. And I think it would be very effective if we could get a phalanx of Democrats to beat the same drum day in and day out and just not forget, we're going to get you. They've started to do it with impeachment. They've started to talk about that. That's great. But impeachment is, you can impeach a great many people and they should be impeached. But that's really only for one guy. Anyway, so I'm thinking to myself that it would be nice, and you have examples of Democrats showing a little verve, a little energy, a little vigor that they might actually care about this country we're losing and watching going down the drain, like Gavin Newsom and his jaunty little social media campaign. Uh, he made some great headlines. You don't really see much of that anymore. But there's been a few Democrats who have poked their head up above the rest to make their little mark against this action. And so it occurs to me that Democrats, I wish they would do that more. I think the people love it. I think it would be a winner politically. I don't see any downside. I wonder, does that sound effective to you? I've got a few examples of things they actually have done. They seem a little insufficient to me. What do you think? Am I barking up the wrong tree?
I think that's actually an excellent idea. I think there's certainly a place where people need to stand up, say the things they need to say. They need to say it about the Epstein list. They need to say it about elections. They also need to find a way to actually convey it so that people are paying attention. So, what I think I'm seeing is that the Republicans are dyed in the wool Trump, MAGA. The Republican Party is now it's for a number of years now, has been lock, stock, and barrel Trump. And they're not going to back down. Over 80 to something like 80 to 86% only have praise for him. There's a portion of that that will say, oh, I think he's terrible. I think he's horrible as a person, but I'm going to vote for him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll keep voting for him. I'll keep supporting him. I just think he's horrible. So that is beyond repair. I mean, I don't know how that, I don't know how you get through to someone like that, or frankly to any of the Republicans, because they still support him. Where he's losing most is among independent voters, which is a good thing because that's all people who he needs to continue to win. Can't win with just Republicans. There are places where you can win with just Republicans, but you can't win everything with just Republicans. So the fact that the independents are starting to, middle ground voters who who are not active enough to maybe pick up on the details when they're happening, are starting to look at things and say, "Oh, well, this is not good. This is not good at all." And so those independent voters are starting to turn, and that's excellent news. So you're right. If somebody's also hitting them with truth bombs and also talking to them about those issues that are actual crimes that are being committed, maybe that will help. There's, you know, perhaps there's a congressional race, I think it's down in Alabama, the first congressional district, where the candidate was endorsed by Trump, but was found to have had some texting with the contestant for Miss Universe from the area. And when the text came out, Trump immediately withdrew his endorsement, gave it to the other guy in the race, the other Republican. And so the first guy had to remove himself from the race. So that's kind of good news. It's not beyond noting that his day job, the guy who had to resign or the guy who had to close his campaign, his daytime job was as a pastor. So the fact that he had these texts going with a young woman and that they were quite explicit was, that shows where the religious leaders are in the area, perhaps, or at least on that side of the political spectrum, certainly is acceptable behavior for them. But if that's the sort of thing where people are actually starting to have consequences for the things they do, that's all to the better.
Yeah, I think we can't have I know they were the same party, but we need to make it explicit that we're not going to have a Ford pardoning Nixon situation here.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know,
That's well said.
yeah. Like this is a and I think that maybe there needs to also be an explicit like maybe even an explicit, like, we didn't start this, right? They are there trying to impeach no matter what, trying to lock up our people no matter what. But there needs to be this idea of like, when Biden came into his presidency and he put Merrick Garland as the whatever big lawyer, and a lot of people saw that as like revenge for him not being on the Supreme Court. But Obama only nominated him as a Supreme Court justice as a moderate, sort of like peace offering to the Republicans. So to then put a moderate in there to expect them to push back on this, and then a lot of people were disappointed that he didn't do what they wanted. That's not that surprising. I feel like there's so much, pandering to the, I mentioned it above, but there's so much of this idea of like, not only are there all these conservatives that are like, Trump is winning, so we're going to be on his side and just give light criticisms about the way that he talks or his, his crassness or whatever. But there's been so much on the left of like, well, he's popular, I guess we should adopt some of these, we should be more strict on crime or immigration or trans rights or whatever, whereas it ends up feeling like your party leaders then don't actually believe in these things, right? We don't really believe in what we've been espousing for several years because we think that we think that the country has changed, and I think that there needs to be the idea is not to moderate this away, but it's to be like, look, like, no, like we can be our own, total way of doing things. And like, we are going to fix the things, we're not going to just be like, well, we have control again now, it's all worked. Instead, it has to be like, we barely got out of this and we're going to make everything strong again to make sure that didn't happen. Yeah, because there's still going to be, even if the presidency changes, there's still going to be the Supreme Court that we have and all the district courts that we have and all the laws that have been changed and, the massive antitrust that's been abolished and all this stuff. That stuff has to come back to ideally further than what it was, but at least has to be back to where it was because that all led to where we are.
Well, it's also fair to point out most of what Trump has done has been done through executive orders. And what that means is that those are only good those are only good for the president who makes them during their term. So when his term ends, the next president can come in and either stop them or reverse them. The question is, will they do that? And that's a perfectly legitimate question because there were things when Biden came in, everybody said, oh, it's going to be so different. And it was. But there were a number of things where Biden said, well, this has changed and we can't change it every time the president changes. We got to have some continuity. So he did take on some of Trump's positions because they were there, which is a problem. As you point out, if the person's not willing to change it, then it becomes a problem. So we need to know that, well, what we really need is for the Democrats to win. But more than that, we need to know which Democrat, because it's going to be up to someone to make some hard decisions and not necessarily just go with the status quo because it's the status quo.
Well, and I believe that also needs to be in the miasma to be like, look, if you're running and you're not about abolishing all this stuff Trump did, then we're not interested in you. I think that there needs to be, I think that we talked about this several weeks ago about the like post-mortem on the most recent election. But, a lot of the issues came from, sort of milquetoast things from the Democrats, and they were sort of capitulating. They weren't talking about Palestine. They weren't talking about all this other stuff. And so, the voting numbers were down. Trump got less votes in 2024 than he got in 2020 where he lost. So, a big of the issue was that people didn't vote. I mean, some of that's, like voter suppression, et cetera, and all these other things. But, one of the things that for all the Republicans who are like, well, I like Trump's policies, but I don't like him. There's a lot of Republicans who voted for him who are just like, I only like him. I don't even care what his policies are, and then you see this like Trump regret or whatever. So we need to get, I don't know if it has to be left-wing populism or somebody who's like, you can bloviate all you want about like, lowering prices, but Trump said he would do that too, and they went up. So like, what does that mean? I don't know what it is, but there has to be some idea that like things are going to change.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Tom, anything to wrap that up?
Nothing to add.
Alrighty. Well, that means we will move on, which means for us, we come to the Epstein count up, which you may or may not know. We do this every time. How many days has it been since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released? And today is day 4019 and counting. It will go up way higher before we ever get a resolution to it, if ever. And I mentioned the Republican candidate who had to abandon his campaign, Trump-endorsed campaign, because of interaction with some women that was inappropriate. So the root cause has not been addressed either. So that will continue as well. So there's not only just learning about these people from the Epstein list, there's what are you going to do about stopping this sort of thing or having actual accountability for it. We will continue to watch and we will continue to talk about it and we will hopefully see something actually happen. For now, thanks for joining us for PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want political laughs, join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find that at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod.
I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.